Let's paint a picture. So imagine you're a comic book reader near the end of 2013. You're surfing the internet looking for any sort of news on upcoming comic books. So while you're scrolling through the news, a headline immediately catches your attention. An article from The Verge. Marvel pushes for diversity with newest superhero, a teenage Muslim girl. Taken aback, you skim through the article, heading down in the comments to see what other people have to say about this. From what you can see, the comments appear to be a mixed bag, with some folks excited about the character, while others aren't exactly full of jubilation. Now fast forward to the present year of 2022, where you'll see the same character producing the same polarizing reactions with the imminent arrival of her Disney Plus show. So why exactly are things always this way when it comes to Kamala Khan, some random teenager from Jersey City who just so happens to be a Pakistani and Muslim? Well, that question really answers itself, but it does raise a better question. Why does Ms. Marvel being a Muslim Pakistani matter to people? While it's obvious why some people gravitate towards characters they can relate to, the answer to this question for other people is a bit more complicated. Now, when I started this, I didn't really know what I wanted my topic to be, but during my research, I found a perfect topic. Resistance to diversity, equity, and inclusion, specifically as it relates to American comic books. Additionally, I do plan on addressing the common arguments for and against diversity, equity, and inclusion, using evidence pulled from various sources, both scholarly and otherwise. In order to understand why some people react negatively to characters like Ms. Marvel, one must understand what it means to be woke. While it originally meant becoming woken up or sensitized to issues of justice, its meaning has changed over time into a political slur, according to linguist Tony Thorne. Indeed, the term is now used by more conservative people to refer to those on the opposing side of the political spectrum. For example, after Clark Kent's son took up the mantle of Superman, DC revealed the character to actually be bisexual. Many people took offense, saying that DC were making a woke Superman, and the character's comic sales then saw a steep decline. This is due to anti-woke sentiments being so common. According to a YouTube video by Literature Devil, stories are woke when it's believed that they're made better by simply representing groups of people who could be considered underrepresented. Essentially, the story itself isn't what matters, but rather the presence of these underrepresented folks. Some people would consider Kamala Khan to be a product of woke culture, as she checks off a lot of the boxes associated with woke characters. Firstly, she's a Muslim. Secondly, she's from Pakistan. Third, she's a young woman. Now, from a certain perspective, I could easily see why they think this. I can easily see why they think Kamala Khan is woke. In fact, she's a direct successor to a character who was portrayed as a white woman. Coincidentally, the character would also become a woke superhero. Shortly before Kamala Khan was introduced as Ms. Marvel, Carol Danvers would drop the name in favor of becoming Captain Marvel. Captain Marvel is often associated with woke comic book characters. This is partially due to her having become a feminist icon, one who now carries a self-righteous attitude both on panel and off. But character flaws aside, Captain Marvel is mostly seen as woke now due to her portrayal on film by actress Brie Larson. During an interview with E! In 2018, when asked about her experiences filming Captain Marvel, Brie Larson exclaimed,
"She's so strong. She can move planets."
This comment didn't go over well for some, especially when coupled with previous words from Marvel Studios head Kevin Feige, in which he stated, "Her powers are off the charts, and when she's introduced, she will be by far the strongest character we've ever had." You see, the cockiness of the character, as well as the hype being built around her, would lead to the character being loathed by a large portion of the audience, who saw this as an attempt to push feminism and similar ideals onto them. You see, people tend to not respond well to force. That especially includes when companies try to push certain characters due to them representing certain groups of people. Her association with feminist icon Captain Marvel, as well as her socio-ethnic background, would serve to make Kamala Khan a perfect woke character, one who Marvel could easily push as being her next big thing. Assuming this was the reasoning behind the character's push, people with anti-woke ideals understandably disliked the character. When put under a microscope, one can find from where this ideology stems. The behavior goes beyond comic books, with it closely resembling resistance to organizational change. According to Dr. Joanna Melgorzata, Michalak at the University of Lodz, resistance to change is customary mentioned in management literature as an inevitable consequence of organizational change initiatives and listed among the most crucial inertial forces against any transformation. Because the future is often uncertain in terms of change, people in general are not motivated to change unless there are compelling reasons to do so, and the destination state to which the organization moves is indeed beneficial to individuals and the whole organization. Therefore, any change attempts encounter resistance. So basically what she's saying is, Essentially, people naturally resist change. The change in question is the deviation from the decades and decades of straight white male heroes that people have become accustomed to. Even when they weren't white, they were straight males, so there was less to resist. Moreover, Dr. Michelet also wrote, because resistance is claimed to be a natural human response to uncertainty, anxiety, and ambiguity inherent for a situation of change, attaining the organizational balance by ensuring a tolerable level of environmental uncertainty, anxiety, and ambiguity for organizational members seems to be a vital determinant of successful change management. When put into the context of comic books, many changes occur at once and are thus deemed woke, which can be seen as being synonymous with an intolerable level of environmental uncertainty, anxiety, and ambiguity. So where's the middle ground? Are people simply just being anti-progressive? The answer may just surprise you. A word often thrown around when discussing the introduction of new comic characters is forced diversity. Forced diversity is when a company, organization, or corporation decides to represent minorities, usually in the form of characters. While it's debatable whether or not forced diversity is even a thing, there have been times where resistance was justified. A prime example of justified resistance to diverse characters can be seen in Marvel's introduction of its New Warriors group. Their diverse team consisted of Trailblazer, Screen Time, B-Negative, and most controversially, the twins, Snowflake and Safe Space. So these new heroes were based on internet archetypes, all the way down to their names. As writer Daniel Kibblesmith explained, because we're doing a story about teenage rebels, a lot of the names are about teens fighting against labels that are put on them. This actually seems like a pretty noble thing. But of course, immediately the characters Snowflake and Safe Space were ridiculed due to them being named after internet terms commonly thrown around as insults. While this alone wasn't an issue, as minorities do often reclaim slurs like the N-word, for example, it was a blatant attempt at appealing to a certain audience. The same can be said for other members of the group, like the hero Screen Time, who many saw as a painful attempt at relating to the newer generation, due to his ridiculous name and his even sillier powers stemming from his exposure to, I kid you not, experimental internet gas. The entire controversy temporarily made Marvel the laughingstock of the internet collectively, with seemingly everyone in agreement on the failure of its New Warriors. In addition to the aforementioned controversy, there was also a Harvard study which concluded that forced diversity training in workplaces was ineffective. Diversity training is intended to create a work environment that promotes diversity, but it appears it may actually be doing the opposite. After employees were forced to undergo diversity training, many minority groups reported increased animosity towards them, and the workplace didn't see any sort of real improvement due to inertial forces. These inertial forces came as a result of the rules being placed on those in charge and the tendency people have to want to prove their autonomy. As the study puts it, try to coerce me to do X, Y, or Z, and I'll do the opposite just to prove that I'm my own person. In other words, forced diversity programs fueled the biases that they were meant to reduce. If this same logic is applied to comic books, resistance to Miss Marvel's push seems almost justified, but it isn't. When one's personal bias is set aside, it becomes clear that Miss Marvel does embody what a good heroic character should be. She's relatable, inspiring, and she's unique. Personally, I think writer G. Willow Wilson did a marvelous job capturing the essence of what makes heroes like Spider-Man and Captain America admirable, whilst also exploring some of the cultural values that were left out of those stories. Even though I can't relate to Kamala Khan on some levels, I still connect with the character's motto.
Good is not a thing you are, it's a thing you do.
Based on her heroic outlook, Kamala Khan should have some sort of universal appeal, but unfortunately for some people, some of that appeal is lost in the fact that she's a Muslim brown girl who Marvel isn't afraid to put front and center.